First of all, I would thank Dr. Johnson for sitting in here for a little bit. We had a good meeting with the Dean of the Colleges of Sciences this morning and also all the department heads, and appreciate the opportunity to sit in your class, Professor Dabney. Really enjoy that. I am an Aggie, class of 93. I did finish a BBA in accounting in 94, which meant that I took one extra year to party. And then in 95, I finished my finance degree. Ever since then, I've been in the energy trading and origination world. And origination is basically the sales side of the business. So there's energy trading, which is where you take advantage, where you close arbitrage opportunities in the market to make money. And origination is where you have a customer-facing business. It might be a customer who's producing fertilizer. It might be a customer who's producing beef and gas as a feedstock in their boilers. A number of different applications. Down to the commercial level, it could be the Domino's across the street making pizza. So the industry business is deregulated down to a very retail level. And that's gone on over the last, let's call it 20 years. Really started in the late 80s and then got into the really fully deregulated once we got into the early 90s. So I'm going to talk about what we do as a business, and then I'm going to ask Professor Dabney to step in and tell me where he thinks statistics fits in, and then I'm going to point out spots where I think it does as well. Now, it's my understanding that most of you are freshmen. Is that true? Freshmen, raise your hands. Sophomores? Anybody above a sophomore? Juniors, I take it? Yep. Good. Well, it's good to be here. Most times I'm speaking on campus. I'm on the executive board of the Trading Risk and Investments program in the business school. I've been on that board for probably 8 years now. And most kids I'm speaking to over there are juniors and seniors. So it's good to get to speak to a broader swath of students. I will tell you a few things in general. So this is what I call the dad advice. It's what my daughter calls the dad advice. I have a 14-year-old daughter. I came to college here in 1989 as a freshman, and I found the social side of college to be very exciting. Absolutely exciting. I didn't have a phone. Back when I was a kid, your phone, they decided it would be a great idea to stitch an 8-pound bag of sand to your cell phone. You remember those? You remember those. So it would sit in your car. So we didn't have cell phones like you have cell phones. It didn't text, didn't do anything. You had to have an antenna on the back of your trunk that was 12 feet tall to get it to work. So it was a different world. The reason I tell you that is the path that you create for yourself going forward as you're entering college or as a sophomore or junior is an incredibly broad path that's in front of you, right? And you meet challenges in college and in your life in general that either you take advantage of and they widen that path, or you don't take advantage of and they close that path, right? So you always want to make sure that you're the person that keeps your path as wide open as possible. Don't ever close doors on yourself, was the lesson that I learned. Because when you get into whatever job you're going to get into, there will be plenty of people, trust me, who will work to close doors on you. So don't ever close doors on yourself. Always go up and knock on the door for the next opportunity. You have to be aggressive. We look for the characteristics in students, and I'll talk to you about our roles here in a bit. We look for the characteristics in students that we can't teach them. We want you to be aggressive. Doesn't mean aggressive in a crazy way. It just means we want you to be a go-getter, right? If I have somebody who's a potential employee of mine who I can sense immediately is not a go-getter, like Holly, I'm just kidding. I don't want them on the team because I can't teach them to be a go-getter. That's something that's ingrained in their mind for the last 22 years, and I'm not going to change it. If I have someone who's a go-getter but knows nothing about the energy business, I can teach him bukus of stuff about the energy business. I can teach them how to negotiate. I can teach them how to go run a meeting. I can teach them how to do public speaking. I can teach them closing pitches that tend to work from time to time. I can teach them everything in the world to make them successful, but I need some core components that go in there. What I like about science students, which includes you guys and girls, is your thoughtfulness and the inquisitive nature that comes with wanting to be in this class. If you're not the type that wants to solve a problem and find the problem to solve, then we probably don't need you. But I know you guys are all here because that's what you do. The biggest gap in the business world, and I spoke about it upstairs with the department heads, is the gap between strategy and execution. So let's talk about business students relative to science students, and specifically you guys taking stats. Business students are trained to do everything up to strategy, and they can come up with a beautiful piece of strategy. But it's the execution that's most critical to turn that strategy into revenue, right? And that's where they often fail. You guys live in that world between strategy and execution just based on what you do, trying to find the final solution and the final answer and to come up with the problems and understand where they exist. That's what we're looking for. So our company is BP, North American Gas and Power. We're inside of BP's integrated supply and trading organization. So make no doubt about it, we're a trading organization. We're the largest, so there's a Gas Daily sheet that ranks marketers in the business. We're the largest marketer of natural gas in the U.S. We move, what's the latest number? Of how much BCF we move a day on the trade floor? 32? Something like 32 BCF a day. And really our job is to find arbitrage opportunities and close them, as I mentioned, and then provide opportunities to customers. In a lot of cases, as I described to the department heads, I want a student with those core characteristics, right? Inquisitive, problem solving, can communicate well, and isn't afraid to get in front of people and have a conversation, and I can teach you the rest of it, right? There are roles, though, in our company where you will come in and you'll model a combined cycle power generation facility where we're going to have a heat rate toll, which gives us the right to call up on power, give them gas, and we get the power output based on a fixed heat rate. You're going to model that 100 different times through Monte Carlo simulation, and you're going to model it based on weather inputs, and I'm going to know exactly how often that thing's going to run based on the accuracy of our weather forecast, right? That's a very critical role that comes into play when we go to make investments in transactions. It helps us understand if we can manage risk, and it helps us understand how big the risk is. Okay, now I'll go back to the slide deck. We are obviously a large oil and gas company. You'll notice if you look at our earnings that came out today, the oil market prices have gone which way, up or down? Down. So we've come down from 100 down to, well, some of y'all are right. Let me give you the full spiel. We've come down to 100, down to 26, back up into the 50s. So we're sitting right now about 50, 55. You make money in oil trading when the market's in contango, which means the forward prices are higher. So there's this cash and carry arbitrage, right? You store it, you sell it in a further month. It's cheaper than your cost of capital. There's margin. If you look at the, as our CFO put it in today's earnings release, the oil strip, which are the prices out in front of you, are flat as a pancake. So trading opportunities are much smaller. But we are a big oil company. The interesting thing is, when we do releases, the trading entity is mentioned in the releases. It's a trading organization that has been very successful both on the oil side. In our group, which is North American Gas and Power, we focus on natural gas, NGLs, and power. Those are the spaces that we play in. On the customer side, we deal with producers across the country. We deal with exporters, LNG exporters. We deal with Mexico and the CFE as far as exporting into Mexico, because they're taking now 6 BCF a day into Mexico. And really the whole effort is to make trading margin and what we call customer margin. We want to find a solution for a customer, and we talked upstairs about if I've got a fertilizer producer who's producing ammonia, and he wants to lock in the spread and hedge his risk between gas prices and ammonia, because gas is a very large feed component to ammonia, that hedge has never been done, right? So people like yourselves who are experts in studying the behavior of numbers and results of multiple regressions, you could come to me and say, hey, based on what we've seen, we can hedge an ammonia spread by hedging it off 42% oil and 42% diesel. You find a correlated hedge that all of a sudden I can develop a product that puts me into a frontier product space, and it's a margin driver for me. Shoot. Absolutely. I was in a conversation with a company called Dyno Nobel last week. Dyno Nobel is primarily an explosives manufacturer, but they just built a big facility in Louisiana. And that facility produces ammonia, which is obviously a component of fertilizer. And their ammonia prices that they get from the consumers is very volatile, right? Gas prices are volatile. So if they go in and hedge or fix their price on gas to take that volatility out, it doesn't do anything for ammonia, right? So now they've got a fixed gas position against a moving ammonia position, which is squashing their margin depending on which way the market is moving. What they would like to do is be able to buy their gas based on an ammonia price, right? So I'll pay for gas and I'll pay you 10% of the price of ammonia per ton. There is no, at least hasn't been found yet, a strong correlation between ammonia and oil or ammonia and diesel or ammonia and some other product that gives you enough comfort of holding that risk, right? Without a premium that just says you're not going to do the deal. However, we have quant groups, obviously, that do a lot of modeling for us to the extent that somebody could come in and say, look, I've done regressions and here's what's going to give you a correlated hedge. We could put those trades on, and that becomes what we would call a frontier trade. And it's because of people with your skill set that want to seek the answer and find the answer that come up with those products. Well, the beautiful thing about that is, in a business like trading and origination, when you're working with products that have been around for years, the margin is very thin. When you're working with frontier products, right, on the cutting edge, you're the first one to come out. We just came out with an asphalt to gas hedge that we're using at some of our petrol stations. That's where the margin is. It's on the frontier products, right? And then everybody tries to figure out what you did, and then about 6 months later they come in and the margin goes down on that product. So we need people thinking like you and using your skill set from a stat point of view to figure out the mechanics to put the proper hedges in place such that we're not carrying a lot of risk. That's a very good example of where what you're studying comes into play. Did that answer your question fully? Okay, so let me go through some of the corporate stuff and then we'll talk more fun stuff. Gabby. Did I introduce y'all? Holly Armstrong, sorry, I failed to introduce. She's in our GDP program. She's a second-year student out of the business school. She came out of the TRIP program, which is the Trading Risk and Investments program. Very big Aggie, good advocate for BP on campus. And Gabby Perez, she's in our USUR, which is U.S. University Relations. So she's on campus kind of making sure that Holly and I don't mess up what she's doing. There you go. We are in North American Gas and Power now. We're located throughout the United States. We're throughout North America. We have a main office in Calgary, Houston, and those are the two major trading hubs. I'm out of Houston, but I manage 42 people that are not in Houston. My people are in Boise, Denver, Omaha, Indianapolis, Chicago, and Traverse City. All wonderful places to travel to April through September. When you go to Omaha in January, like I did, it's a different world that I'm certainly not used to, having grown up in Houston. The reason we have these regional offices is for a couple. Number one, we're believers that you got to have your marketers and your originators in front of the customer base. So these businesses are built around where there's a concentration of end users for natural gas and power. That's why we build where we build. The other case is some of these businesses we bought. Mobile was a purchase, Salt Lake was a purchase, Boise was a purchase, Omaha was a purchase. And what we do is we find these companies who are our competitors and they just develop a niche market and there's no way to go organically defeat them because their name is so good in that market, so we'll acquire them and bring them into our business. So we've had 13 acquisitions over the last, call it 15 years that have built our business out. Our NGLs group have positions in Singapore and London and Houston. But pretty well spread out. Oh, why am I holding this? So we trade a number of products really across the board. Crude, natural gas, LNG, power. Y'all know what LNG is. Liquefied natural gas. You know the size differential when you cool LNG to negative 261 degrees? I think that's right. It goes down to 1/6 the size of the vapor gas, so you can put 3 BCF of gas onto a ship. And
What are BCF?
billion cubic feet. So if you think of a cubic foot, it's a billion of them. It's a lot of gas. The average daily consumption in the U.S. is around 67 billion cubic feet a day. Now you think about that. You're talking about when you see a massive platform like Thunder Horse that BP has in the Gulf of Mexico, that produces, let's call it 250,000 a day, okay, 250,000 MMBTUs, so it would be 0.25 BCF, right, to supply a market that is 68 BCF a day. So think of all the production that has to take place just to satisfy that daily demand. It is incredible, absolutely incredible. We trade currencies largely because we have some Canadian stuff and some Mexican stuff, so we're trading the currency fluctuations so it doesn't affect our earnings. We do trade biofuels. We have a big biogas business, very successful for us, where we will go take landfill gas, we will take advanced biofuels from anaerobic digesters. In a lot of cases, it's really kind of stuff you wouldn't think of normally, but I visited a dairy that had an anaerobic digester who would take all the manure from the dairy cattle, process it into energy pellets, and then create methane. We then take that into the vehicular fuel market to produce environmental credits. In the news lately, you've heard about RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard. That is putting advanced biofuels into gas. Like when you go to the pump and you see it contains 10% ethanol, these would contain 10% advanced biofuels, right? It's a substitute for the ethanol. It's a fascinating business to learn about. Carbon emissions, we trade those. Maybe not for too much longer, but we'll see where the current administration takes us. And ag products as well. Okay, so we do cross-commodity, right? Years ago, we had this NGL group that kind of did its own thing. We never spoke to them from the gas side. We had this power group, did their own thing, never spoke to them from the gas side. And a structured product group that sometimes you'd work with. But we finally got together and said, look, this is ridiculous. We have a service to offer. We need to combine those together and really operate as one team. So we'll go into a producer now, and we'll have an offering for oil offtake, NGL offtake, and gas offtake, which come out of the same well. But we'll have a kind of one-stop shopping with that party. We'll go into a power producer and we'll offer gas and power and structured products, heat rate tolls, revenue puts. And there's a tremendous amount of study and deal development that goes into it, which is largely based on modeling and understanding big data around that plant to know how often that's going to run. Because if we're going to go pay somebody for a heat rate option, we want to make sure that we're going to get our return back, right? The other thing we have that's critical here, and it might be on the next slide, I'm going to talk ahead of it, is our fundamental analytics group. We have a tremendous amount of people, let's call it 60, that all they do is analyze the fundamentals of the market, right? What new pipelines are being built, what power plants are being built, what industrials are being built. I mean, when gas got as low as it did, all of a sudden you saw a lot of the chemical producers shifting production to the U.S. from other countries. Those create opportunities, right? Number one, as an analyst, you start to study how that's going to impact local demand and then how it's going to impact, on a larger scale, regional demand. And you start to develop trade strategies based on what's going to occur. If all of a sudden you see a massive pocket of demand developing in South Alabama, and there's a lot of gas going through there, but not enough to cover that incremental load, you know that the flow dynamics are going to change in a big way. And by doing that data analytics work, that then develops directly into a trade strategy that then traders would go employ. And then as part of the data team, you're watching the trade develop and you see exactly how it pays off or doesn't pay off, right? A good trade, you put it on, 15 days later you made $20 million. Bad trade, you put it on, start losing money, and then you get stopped out at $5 million, right? We're good at stopping people out when they're losing money. You have to be in a trading organization without a doubt. Okay, these are the disciplines that we have on the floor. I did speak over some of them. Origination, that is the role of going out and being customer facing. And really, and it took me probably 5 years to get there. You have to really have solid listening skills. So when I'm at dinner with a counterparty who's talking to me about ammonia, I need to hear the 2 or 3 things he says in an hour-and-a-half conversation and be able to go, okay, I've got something in my toolbox that I can help him fix that problem. And then you go back and you do some research and you work it and then hopefully get to where you close a transaction. Very key to be a listener. The way I talk about origination, which is the group I run, if you're the person when you go out to dinner with a group And it always happens where there's this awkward silence when all of a sudden you're like having a great conversation and then it just, and nobody's talking. If you're the person that's got to fill up that gap with talking just because it's too odd for you, then you should be an originator, right? You got to be the person that keeps the conversation going. You want to keep asking questions. You want to ask open-ended questions. You want to understand almost in the way that you would depose somebody how to use the techniques out of a deposition that a lawyer would use to get information out of your client, right? The pregnant pause technique, right? Where you ask a question and then you just sit there. And then they might say something and you still continue to sit there. And inevitably, all of a sudden, that other person starts filling up the room with everything they know. So you learn those techniques, but you have to be a good listener without a doubt. You have to be very outgoing. Trading, if you want to be chained to a computer, staring at numbers all day, digesting data analysis from the fundamental analyst, that's the role for you. I did it for 10 years. Being chained to the desk gets old. It's very rewarding. Instantly, every day, whether you're an originator or trader, you know that night how much money you made. We are on mark-to-market accounting, so if I put a trade on at the end of the day, I know if I'm down $2 million or up $1 million. And the whole organization knows because we send a P&L sheet out with everybody's name on it. It goes all the way to the CEO. Everyone knows every day how you're doing. So you know how you've heard people go, this ought to be like baseball. We should post everybody's salary. That's what we do. We post everybody's P&L.
So as a trader, do you have a fixed amount of money that you can play with each day or year or month?
Yep. So here's the way that we measure it, and maybe you can tie this back to your class. We measure it by using VAR, value at risk, which is correct me when I'm wrong, because I'm going to watch your smirk when I go off course here. It is a probabilistic distribution of when you're going to lose money based on a trade, right? So you're looking for the worst case event that could occur over a 9-day period or a 20-day period, whatever you set it to. And so we have VAR established volumetrically, and then we have loss limits on top of it. So we'll put a trade on, and we delegate the VAR limits. So senior trading manager has the most, he'll delegate down to a team lead. The other thing we do is we have what we call T-SPA meetings, which are with our compliance group. The thing about a trading organization is you have absolutely got to be at your core an honest person. You've seen Barings Bank years ago almost go under because a guy drawered a trade. We call that, when you do a trade and it's going against you and you don't put it in the system so that nobody knows, you stick it in your drawer. We call that drawing a trade. Well, you draw the trade because you hope the next day you come in. First of all, don't ever do that. Second of all, you hope the next day you come in and the position's better. But inevitably what happens, you come in and the position's worse, right? Well then, after you do that for a couple days, another phenomenon in the trading world occurs. This is a very technical term. You become married to the trade, which means you really start to believe now, well, this has gone against me for 2 days, it is going to come back. So you double down on the trade, which means double the size of it, right? Seems logical. Almost took Barings Bank, the oldest bank in England, down. Nick Leeson, I think it was, back in the early 90s. Cannot do that. You absolutely have to be up front. On our team, if we have an issue, we are the first one to report it. So we have a compliance group that will go back, and we use them as learnings, right? Somebody made a mistake, here's what they did, forgot to put a deal in. Let's all learn from that. But you have to be, and I ask this question when I interview a lot of kids. I'll ask them, when's the last time you've seen cheating in college? Or forget how the question goes. When's the last time you've seen something that you felt was unethical in your classes? Okay? And what's the typical answer most would give? What?
You said when, correct?
What's the typical answer? Yeah, when have you had to deal with something you thought was unethical?
Pretty much almost every day.
And what was the behavior?
Like you can see the way people act, the idea. Not even that, like, I just forgot what I was saying. Yeah, I completely forgot. I'm sorry.
That's fine, so I'll help you. The number one answer that comes up is you see people cheating, right? So my question, because I'm looking for your character in that answer, my follow-up question is, what'd you do about it? Well, it was just a class. You know, Professor Dabney probably wouldn't have cared. So I didn't say anything, and it was my best friend. So then I follow up and say, okay, if you're working for me and your best friend's putting trades in the drawer, right, what do you do then? Oh, well, I would tell on him immediately. I go, well, but you wouldn't tell on him when he's cheating in school. You know the Aggie Honor Code. What makes me think you're going to tell on him when he's sitting next to you doing stuff that's wrong, right? So character, and I know you guys have heard this from your parents, so you can kind of zone out a little bit. Character is the hardest thing to ever get back, right? You have to be grounded in principles where you always do the right thing. And a lot of times the right thing is determined by you, and your gut tells you what it is. But you have to be grounded in those principles no matter what you do in your career. Always do the right thing. You make a mistake, be honest about it. I have never seen a person get fired for admitting to a mistake. I've seen plenty of people get fired for not admitting to a mistake and trying to cover it up. That's when you get fired. So remember that. Always do the right thing. All right, where are we going next? Short-term analytics. We talked about analytics. So you're researching supply and demand drivers in any given region. It's kind of what we talked about, right? You want to be the expert on what's going to happen in your region. If I'm in the Northeast, and I'm going to fill you in on some background here. Traditionally, call it 1993, gas was produced in 4 regions. The Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin, the Rockies, Texas, Louisiana onshore, and offshore. And all of our pipeline infrastructure was taking it straight to the demand center. So it went over to Florida, went to Atlanta, went up into the Northeast. The Rockies went over to the west, and some of the Canadian stuff came down to the west. The rest of it went over to Michigan, Chicago. Okay, that was our flow pattern, been that way for years. All of a sudden, technology develops, and we come up with horizontal drilling, right? Not only horizontal drilling, but horizontal drilling with an ability to drill multiple wells on one pad site. Starting to go crazy. So the largest producing region of gas is now in Pennsylvania, the Marcellus Shale. How many have heard of the Marcellus? Yep. What happens is it flipped completely the infrastructure. So all these pipes that were going up to feed demand, they're now coming this way because they're satiating demand with the Marcellus, and there's excess that's got to come back home. And there's so much excess now because we've gotten so good at horizontal drilling and fracking methods that now we're going to ship it on ships, make it LNG, and we're going to export it, right? So it's amazing in a period of 5 years how the market just completely flipped on itself. You guys are the smart guys that are in there forecasting that. We talk at work all the time that we need a group, because all of us can see to the horizon. We need a group of 5 very smart people that sit there and think about what's next beyond the horizon that we can't see coming. So take everything going on currently and start to forecast what's going to happen once we get past the horizon. That's when you're in the frontier area. And what you're learning can be very critical to that, both modeling those structures, but also the inherent, the makeup of your thought process, right? Which is to be inquisitive and to find a solution, in my opinion. We don't find that in business students. Business students will say, oh, well, we've never done that before. So like on the ammonia hedge I was talking about. If they had a customer come to them and say, hey, we want to lock in the spread between gas and ammonia, the business student would come back to work, and he would say, this is what they want to do, and he'd talk to 3 or 4 people, and every one of them would go, we've tried that before, it doesn't work. Tried that before, it doesn't work. Tried that before, it doesn't. And they go, oh, doesn't work. Well, we need people that have the inquisitive mindset that go, let me figure out how to make that work, right? I mean, it's pretty incredible when you guys think that way. All right, next. You want to do this one, Gabby? I'll hold this.
Okay, so there are lots of opportunities to learn more about what Jared said, but just about BP in general and ways for you to get engaged with BP. So I know I saw a few hands earlier when Jared asked for the mix. So we have a lot of opportunities specifically for freshmen and sophomores, but for freshmen through senior as well. We don't typically offer internships to no freshmen, sometimes sophomores, but typically at the junior level. But we want you guys to gain some real valuable experiences ahead of that time. These are really great resume builders and opportunities to get to know more about what BP is all about and what's important to us. So BP STEP, I'm going to talk through these engagement programs that are available to you now. The first is BP STEP. It stands for Shaping Talent, Energy, and Potential. This is a program that we've actually had around for several years, but we rebranded the name. It used to be called Discovery Days, but we realized it's definitely more of a program that's shaping you into an individual to be a successful person in your career and the industry that you choose to pursue. So it's a 3-day leadership and networking program. We have a program that takes place in June and another that takes place in July. It is in Houston, and you'll get opportunities to meet current interns in all of the disciplines that we have interns for, challengers, and graduate development programs. So challengers is what we call our students in an engineering path or an accounting path who are in the first 3 years of their career. GDPs are the first 3 years of their career for the trading segment. You'll hear from executive leaders. We'll go to Topgolf. You'll have a volunteer project. It's really 3 days to get to know other students like you from across the country. And there's a $500 scholarship involved, and is personally the one that I'm most passionate about. I'm part of the university recruitment team, and we lead a lot of these sessions. And it's kind of your time to get to know the best interviewing practices, how to prepare for career fair, any burning questions that you might wonder, what makes me a good candidate? This is a great time to kind of hone in on some of those skills. We have IST sophomore experience. So everything that Jared has said, but in a week, it's kind of like a trading commodities boot camp. We have this in our Chicago office. So in Houston, we trade gas and power. In Chicago, we trade global oil. And this is an opportunity available your sophomore year. So it's also a really great opportunity to network and get to know folks that are part of that organization. And we want to kind of identify some early talent from those programs as well. This is, if you're interested in VP, this is a great way to, companies like ROI, it's, you know, a return on investment if we continue to see you after that, and hopefully get an internship with us following that. And then we have our VP Scholars Program. This is for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. This is a $5,000 scholarship that goes to you. So last year was the first year that we ran this program. We had a huge induction at Hotel Sorella in Houston, and it's a day, about a half a day, learning about BP in the morning, and then a big banquet at night. Personally, for me, it was one of the coolest experiences I've been to. It was a who's who of BP executives, and we split everyone up into different tables, and since A&M is my school, I was with the A&M team. We gave the scholarship to about 10 Aggies last year, 100 total. So there's a good chance that you could be selected for that. And we have now follow-up days. They're called Scholar Days, where you'll be invited back to a BP site. And it's depending on your interest, you can either go to Houston or Chicago. So these are really great opportunities for you guys. And just to touch on our internships, primarily for juniors, they are 12-week programs. They are paid. They are real project work. Whatever you're working on is something that someone is working on in the business and is able to pass over to you for a 12-week period. We do provide corporate housing as well around the office that you're located in. And these opportunities open January 16th. They will close March 16th. And there's some of them, the application process is about the same, but they typically have an essay portion and a virtual interview piece. So if you guys have not ever participated in a virtual interview, I can send out some information to you guys. But if you've ever heard of HireVue, it's an app you can download, and they have practice tools. I encourage you to do that. The website to apply is thisbp.com/US Student Ops. But I have these that you guys can pick up before you leave. And then just a little bit more, I want to touch on Holly will be leading, and I'll be with her, trading simulations next week. So if you're interested in what you hear today, follow up, join us at one of the trading sims, get to know a little bit more about what we do at BP, and continue to engage with us.
Okay, so quick follow-up. How much time do you have?
30 minutes.
Okay, good. I don't want to take too much, thank you, and then after. But, okay, so Gabby talked about the internships. I work on the trade floor. Again, my name is Holly. I'm Aggie, class of 2013. So I come back to y'all frequently to hang out with you guys and know BP, because my issue was that I didn't have any idea that BP trade floor existed. Didn't know outside of my connection Chicago. We also have our trade floor, which Gabby and Jared mentioned. We trade oil, fuel oil, distillates, heavier things up there. That is mostly trading and analytics. So Jared talked a lot about origination. That's going out with customers, dealing. I like to put it, it's trading with relationships. So you're doing the deals, you're coming with creative things, you're looking at pricing, but you're also building relationships with people. Trading is exactly what it sounds like. You're looking at commodity prices. Generally, you are behind a desk most of the day, watching as the market opens. You've got to be there ready for it until the market closes. Analytics, just like Jared talked about, it's going to be building models, it's going to be looking at supply and demand. It can be long term, so 10, 20, 50 years out, or it can be short term, and you're sitting with specific commodities. So NGLs, you can be especially in NGLs. Can anybody tell me what NGL stands for? You guys know? Do you have an idea? Natural gas liquids. Can you give me an example? Yeah, just exactly. So NGLs, things like propane. I'm sure you guys drilled out this weekend, right? I would hope. Propane is an NGL. So things like that. Analytics, especially sit with different products, nat gas, crude, and really hone in on that commodity and try to figure out in the short term, day to day, hourly, minute by minute, working with our weather guys. We have meteorologists who sit on the floor to figure out what's going to be happening on a short term time frame. So every year you rotate. So you pick a path at the end of your internships based on assessments that you go through. So you'll be tested on all the different paths to kind of give you guys an idea, give us an idea of where you want to be, where you're good at, where your strengths are. The internships are as much of an interview for you guys as they are for us. So you guys really should be, interviewing the company that you're with, deciding is this right for me culturally? Do I love what I do? We try to make sure you're really set and you understand what is going to happen in your career if you start with CP. So then once you pick your path, you start in the graduate development program. And it'll be 3 years, 1-year rotations. So you could go from scheduling, which is movement on pipes, and that's really helpful when you first start out to understand where the physical commodities are moving back and forth. You work with the traders, you work with originators, you work with all kinds of people. So scheduling's a good place to be. You could do an analyst. So strictly an analyst for a team. Okay, what do you need? You need to build maps, build models. Do I need to be valuing deals? What can I do to help? Deal entry, understanding just from the basics, where are these numbers coming from? You're also given the bandwidth to be able to understand exactly what's going on. So learning, by learning classes, there's a lot of classes that go on weekly, monthly, that people are encouraged to attend. So it's not just like sink or swim. The energy industry is not something that's necessarily taught in college campuses, and we understand that. So when you guys come in, there's a lot of safety net there, and that's what this program provides. So again, the 3 paths, all kinds of different positions. I think that covers that one. Do you have any questions about this? Yeah.
So let's see. Did you say that you enter into this program following an internship?
Exactly. So after the assessments, as an intern, once you're offered the position, a full-time position, you'll start the following January or July into a full-time role with BP under the umbrella of a graduate development program. So then you'll have the first 3 years like as a kind of a safety net. At the end of the 3 years, you'll post for whatever jobs. During the 3 years, you're allowed to post for whatever jobs if you want to interview outside and kind of see, okay, well, I've decided I've had rotations. I want to go work for Jared. I'm going to go interview for a position that's open on Jared's team. You can wait till the end of the 3 years, really take complete advantage of all those rotations, and then interview for a position at that point. So, yeah, it's a really cool program.
It says graduate. That doesn't mean you have to have a graduate degree to be a part of this, right?
No, it just seems like you graduated from college. So more often than not, it's mostly undergrad. I have my master's, and I think 1 or 2 other graduates have their master's as well, but that is by no means the normal on the trade floor. So.
It is, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that I would say 99% of our hiring comes out of our intern pool. I think most companies are shifting to where, you will hire directly out of that intern pool. I would say 5 years ago, it was probably 50%, and then we would come to another round on campus for interns, or for full-time. Not the case anymore. We're hiring straight out of the intern pool.
It's really the pipeline of
since you guys hire like straight out of the internships, how competitive would you guys say that they are? Because I know that you guys go around to like A&M, and I'm sure you hit UT and other colleges around here. About how many students apply and you compete with for the internships?
Kathy, question for you.
They're competitive. We do have a lot of students apply. It varies each number depending on business need each year, the amount of students that we hire. The full-time positions are competitive because we do pull from our intern pool that we convert from. But don't let that be a deterrent from applying. Our application process is pretty simple, and it is competitive, but we are looking for students who are competitive and in that program. So it's kind of
But what are their base requirements to apply? 3.0 GPA,
a 3.2 GPA.
3.2.
3.2 GPA, and now or in the future will not require visa sponsorship. We do not sponsor for undergraduate roles. We do for the geoscience and petrophysics space, but in this role, those are the only GPA requirements. Our applications open up every year on August 1st, and so I encourage you, if you're interested, the sooner you apply, the better. But we'll be back in the fall for sure promoting these programs. So most companies or several companies and BP fill our positions in the fall for the following summer. So our summer 2017 roles were filled
October.
in 2016. So we'll be back here filling the next year's roles.
Yeah,
in the
and
fall.
to give you guys some numbers, we usually on the Houston trade floor have anywhere from 12 to 20 interns per summer. So that helps a lot, but put a number to it. And then a couple in our regional, mostly Chicago, we have about the same. I don't know if we have interns in our regional offices, Denver maybe.
Few.
A few.
It's spotty.
Yeah.
I would say it goes back to my earlier statement, though. Don't close the door on yourself because somebody else will. That's one to walk right through and see if you can get in. And these sophomore experiences, which I often speak at, what are we calling it now?
Sophomore experience.
Sophomore experience. Those are great experience to come in, and there's usually, 30 to 40 kids who get to see
I think it's about 30.
across the business. You meet all the way up to the CEO in a setting downstairs where you're grouped together. It's a very good experience to come in and get a feel for. I think for a lot of you, the first time on a trade floor, it's pretty overwhelming. And it's also exciting. I mean, I can tell you when I started in the business, I worked in an office that was 10 by 10 for Tenneco Energy. And I was like, man, I've got the sweetest gig. And I went over to Enron when I was interviewing for my job, and I stepped on the trade floor, and they were going to give me a desk that was 5 foot wide, a little similar here, otherwise you'd have a foot break between them. I was like, this is it. This is for me. I mean, you just knew instantly. So it'd be great to get down and have a visit.
Yeah, and guys, that's something I don't think I really knew, at least as an undergrad, that people that come on campus are here because they want to be here. This is no facade, it's what you see is what you get. We're very approachable. So I know Gabby's email is very available. I tend to make my email very available. So as you guys have questions, as you want to build relationships with people out in the industry, tip, hey, like the Aggie family is special in and of itself. But outside of that, most people, if you ask for their advice, are very willing to give it to you. So,
Quite frankly, when we go into these, and I'll tell you how these networks are incredibly important, I'll typically walk down to Holly and say, do you know these people? And she'll say, yes, this one has reached out to me. She came down to Houston. We had lunch. And those are the people that we're looking for.
it'll be great. Don't put a wall up when you walk through the door. So this one kind of covers the commercial side. So like I said, analytics, marketing origination, and trading are those paths for the graduate development program. Graduates outside of IST are called challengers, and so that's going to be kind of your engineering, more technical type programs. This is specifically IST.
And again, the term graduate means graduated from school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
not
program.
graduate. Yeah.
So this is just another alternative. So we have, so what I just covered was the commercial facing one. This is more back office, I think. Finance, risk, and compliance. So they're our support team. We could not do what we do commercially without them. They're the ones looking at VAR. They're the ones telling us compliance, right? They keep us out of the yellow orange jumpsuits, right? Like, hey guys, this is not going to look good on the front front page of a Wall Street Journal. Let's talk about it. How do you want to respond to this conversation? So compliance is really, really important. They're the ones who read the huge legal documents and make sure that what we're doing is complying and reputationally what we want to show to the world. So it's great. Risk, same thing. 3-year program, 1-year rotation, same general concept as the commercial facing. This one does not have paths, if I'm right. It's just right, Gabby. They kind of do it all 3.
They will do all 3.
Yeah, they'll do all 3. So up in Chicago, they have finance, risk, and compliance. In Houston, it's just finance and risk. But you'll rotate through those roles over the 3 years. So again, really, really good opportunity. Same general concept, out of school, 3 years, and then at the end of the 3 years, you go into what is termed kind of a full-time role, and then you kind of already full-time. It's just, what is it, career, right?
And commodity risk, just as a definition, is the group that manages all of our positions. They verify that they're accurate, which then produces our P&L. So they're the responsible party for production of P&L statements and making sure that our books are marked appropriately.
Okay, and this is the last kind of graduate development program that we have on the trade floor, and this one's a little bit different. It's very project driven. So if you guys have ever done anything systems or IT oriented, it comes out in waves. We've got waves of IT stuff. So whatever project is going on at that time, that's where the graduates jump onto. So it could be a year rotation. Ideally, it's a year rotation in one project, another year rotation in another project. They have really cool opportunities to build out things for the trade floor. We are very, very data dependent, and therefore very systems dependent. So they have a lot of demand. Again, we could not do what we do without these people. So 2 years, Houston and Chicago, trade floor. Sounds like it.
It's data-driven problem solving. So if you're really interested in technology and providing kind of intermediate solutions to support our training program, they also have a formal internship as well and development program, and another great opportunity.
And that is all that we have formally for you guys. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to open it up and ask questions.
So I'm actually a graduating senior, and I'll be a PhD candidate next year. Do y'all only have internships for undergraduates, or do you guys have opportunities for graduates?
It depends. We do primarily hire undergraduate students, but it's not, I would say we primarily hire undergraduate students, but it depends. For me, the success that I've seen in graduate students are those who've built relationships and have continued to kind of network and follow through and have kind of passion for them.
The question I think we would ask is, if you came in and did an internship and we offered you a job, would you take that job? And if the answer was, I'm going to go back and finish my PhD, which is a perfectly acceptable answer, then we would probably shy against bringing somebody in on that internship because we couldn't capitalize on it. That's not to say finish your PhD and either teach or come back, because we do have quant teams that, yeah, they're in a different space relative to their understanding of all things numbers. Really, the message today is, and the message we gave upstairs to the dean and the department heads was, you guys are wired in a way just by your nature that you think differently than business students. And we've been at the business school for years. And the things that you can't teach are the things that you have, right? The inquisitive nature, the intelligence, the ability to take a set of data and get it into something that's usable relative to project evaluation. You're a diverse group of students, which is always good, because we love diversity of thought, and that comes from having a diverse group of people at the table. You're also, I think, very self-aware. It's my own personal opinion, but I think it's because you've grown up in the world kind of sciences that is, it's a pretty factual-based study. The self-awareness here, because of that, I think is much higher than what's over there. And self-awareness is huge, right? It's going to be huge in your career. So when you can look in the mirror and you can identify all your weaknesses and your strengths and be really honest about it, the quicker that you can learn to master that skill, the better off you'll be in life. Because when people come give you criticism or they give you feedback in your first review, you're going to hear that feedback, but then mirror it with what you just did your self-assessment and go, oh, they're right, I need to keep improving on that. And if you don't do that and you're not self-aware, like some of the business students, it's this very offensive, why don't you like me? I've had kids cry in their first review because they've never had feedback before that was maybe negative. But become self-aware and be ready. I mean, if my boss comes in and he says, hey, you don't pay attention to detail, I go, you're exactly right. I've been like that for 10 years. Not sure I can change it. But I don't get upset by it because I know that about myself. So be self-aware. Have a passion. Do something you're passionate about. Don't ever make a career decision based on money. Just don't, because it doesn't lead to happiness. Make a decision about a career that you're passionate about. And quite frankly, what this is, it's an alternative path. If you want to take your brains and put it on a trade floor, it can be a very, very rewarding career.
So suppose that I had two job opportunities. One was, say, at MD Anderson Cancer Center.
Yep.
One's with BP. Going to MD Anderson, I'm helping to cure cancer.
Yep.
That's something that would be easy to generate passion about. What would you say is the source of passion in, say, the energy industry?
I think it's, first of all, you have to be a big subscriber to free and open markets. You have to be a subscriber to regulation, but not over-regulation. And you have to be inspired by wanting to solve the problem that exists every day in debottlenecking our energy infrastructure system. And that has to wire you up, right? Because you want to go do that, because if I do X, Y, and Z, all of a sudden I'm going to make 10 grand, right? A lot different than the passion to go cure cancer, right? That could be a passion that's because it affected one of your parents or a sibling. And I wouldn't make a strong argument if somebody was very passionate about going to cure cancer. I would want you to go cure cancer. My family's not been affected by cancer, but clearly that's more important in life than trading energy. But if there are those students in here who don't have that same passion and can find the passion, you really have to understand how you're wired, right? Do people know how they're wired in here? Why are you driven the way you are? What motivates you?
Kind of like personal best. I want to do better than what I was doing a year ago.
Yeah. Does money ever come into that?
Not really. I mean, it plays a part because I need money to survive in this economy.
Yep.
But other than that, not really.
Okay. Then that's a good passion to have now. What passion do you have about what career you want to do? Do you know yet? Are you still thinking?
So I originally was doing accounting and financing, and
Yep.
I didn't like it, so I switched over to statistics. But
Yep.
I realized that I'm still passionate about the business world, but
Yep.
I'm more passionate about like the specific numbers of projection rather than just doing the adding and subtracting in the books.
Yeah.
So
Taking data and being able to use it as opposed to plug it into a journal entry.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, good. You've got to understand those motivations. That's the key, right? I was a guy as a young kid that was motivated by money. I don't know where I got it from. Quite frankly, my mom told me a story, who's no longer with us, but she said, we were talking about that because I have a life coach who helps you kind of figure things out, and I had turned into this person, which I've changed from them, but when I get my bonus every year, that was my assessment of how did I do this year. And if it was off because of company performance or whatever, I'm like, what? For like a month. So in the counseling, what they tell you is, that's not, you got to find that core passion, right? Not a material passion. It's the core passion of what you want to do if they paid you zero. There's a book out called Drive. The author is Daniel Pink. He's a behavioral psychologist. Have you read that? And I'm going to give this synopsis and you tell me where I go wrong. But effectively, the way I read it from a trading point of view is they take people like to garden. And intrinsically, which in their core, they love to garden. So they go out and they give them these great garden things. They say, hey, go garden, have whatever you want, use whatever tools you want, and they love it, right? Next week they bring the same group back and they say, go garden, we're going to pay you $50 a day. And they're like, okay, so they garden, they get the $50. Next time they come back, go garden, we're going to pay you $100 a day. Well, all of a sudden, they used to love to garden for free. Now they don't want to garden unless they get the extrinsic value. So the intrinsic value of gardening to them went to zero in their core. And the only reason they were doing it was to get the money, right? Make sure you don't get into that situation, because that can be nasty.
And I
That could
encourage
be
you guys to
nasty.
ask that question to everyone. Why do you do what you do? It's
Yep.
different for everyone.
It is.
So a lot of your speaking is about the finance ends, it sounds like. So if you're more interested in, the physical, let's find the oil or how we're going to get the oil out of the seabeds or whatever, do these programs you all were speaking about, are they the same ones that person that prefers to be more hands-on, or are these programs specifically you mentioned, Dave, for the finance end of the business?
We look for a mix of disciplines. So it's a mix of, for these programs specifically, they will be a mix of accounting, finance, math, stats, economics, engineering. It's going to be, we try to kind of, it's about 30 students that we pull for each program, so we try to have a good mix of each, because BP has a lot of different opportunities, and we want students who are interested in engineering to pursue BP, but we also want others to know that there's a lot of other kind of wheels spinning BP that are outside of engineering.
Was your question, is there an opportunity set like this on the upstream side where we actually would drill and produce? Or did I misread your question?
No, it's kind of just like the BP step. Is that something that someone's more interested in upstream would be looking at, or are there different internship programs?
STEP is BP, so it's more of a development program. The only one that's specifically IST oriented is the sophomore experience, but the scholars and the BP STEP program are just great ways to get to know BP, our values, our culture, if you see a fit, if it's something that you're interested in, and then you can network with those that are part of a discipline that you are interested in. So it is multidisciplinary.
You guys recently made a deal with Cosmos Energy, and I was wondering how specifically statistics played into making that deal rather than just the finance of it.
If I knew the specifics of the deal, I would help you answer that. You know anything about the Cosmos deal? I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is the technical knowledge that an engineer in like chemical engineering or petroleum engineering, that knowledge, is it valuable to somebody on the trading floor that might be trading crude oil or natural gas, or is that not something that's really seen as?
I think it's valuable in the sense that you're talking about chemical engineering.
Right.
So what we've seen in the business school, when the price of oil went down, we started to see a lot of chemical engineers and petroleum engineers come into the trading program because they were advanced in their engineering program, and if they joined the TRIP program, they could get a master's in finance. I will say what we find among graduates is a great increase in maturity in that population of students relative to business, probably not as relative to you guys. At the end of the day, trading is this. I mean, the best traders on the open outcry platforms that used to be in New York, the NYMEX, New York Mercantile Exchange, they were high school graduates, but they had common sense because they grew up in some pretty rough neighborhoods and rough streets, and their common sense was just uncanny, and they didn't mind pulling the trigger, right? They weren't afraid of risk. They were the best traders at that. What we want is your brains, and I don't want all of you. If you want to go cure cancer, go do it, please, because I don't want to pull you back from that. If you want to go do Six Sigma, if that's still in operation, or is it Seven Sigma now? I don't know what it is. Go do that. But if you're looking for something that's an alternative to where I just want your characteristics because I can teach you everything else and you'll be a successful trader or originator, then this is the path that we want to offer as an alternative path.
I noticed that y'all had offices in London, Singapore, and Calgary as well. Do y'all work with those offices very often at all? And also, are the same opportunities for the U.S. offices available there as well?
I would say no.
The UK has a challenger program as well. They have a probably more formal one. I can't speak for Singapore and some of the other areas, but we do try from the recruitment space try to go globally aligned with them. So they are on challenger paths. We do have someone from the London office who's doing one of his HR rotations in Whiting, Indiana, one of our refineries. But you won't cross that within a challenger program. You wouldn't go to Houston to London, but
So I'm going to amend that slightly. So we do, with our GDP, our graduate development program, the commercial facing one, it's very important that we are able to understand what all the other offices are doing because it's a global industry, right? And with LNG, it's making it global.
Yep.
We have to understand what everybody else is doing. So we do, within the graduate development program, have the ability to do an exchange sort of a opportunity. So a couple of years Chicago graduates come down to Houston for about a week at a time, both ways. So there is a lot of collaboration within IST. Now, I can't speak to the upstream and downstream, but within IST, there's a lot of collaboration between offices. Singapore, we haven't done that yet because of the time difference, but it happens. It absolutely does.
Anything else?
So energy is a finite quantity, or at least the sources of energy, as far as I know, are finite quantity on our planet. When are we going to run out?
Well, that's been guessed at before, and we're well past those time periods. I don't know. It's an interesting question when you figure that the speed to get it out is a lot better than it was before. So we're extracting it at a much quicker pace. It really depends, and quite frankly, it is somewhat set by regulation. I mean, to the extent that you peel off regulation around every type of fossil fuel that you can burn, you're going to burn through them quicker. We have seen significant advancements in wind energy, specifically in Texas. We've seen solar be quite attractive. But if we're going to make a run to somehow try to figure out how to make coal burn and get as much gas out of the ground and supplant OPEC, it's going to be quicker to get to that point than not. I think then the next thing we'll hear about is some large discovery that nobody knew existed, and we have some new technology to get to it. But I do think you have to get, what will eventually happen is electric vehicles, they'll become more mainstream, I think, to a certain extent. Problem with electric vehicles is, where does electric come from? From some fossil fuel burning plant, right? So I don't know the answer to that question. If I did, I would put a trade on no, and I'd retire in 2 years.
I want to reiterate to you guys. Oh, yeah. Question.
So some of the things that I look for in a company is their sustainability motion. And with BP, I know you guys have trading of biofuels, but what are some of the things that the company does to promote an environmental consciousness?
So we have significant investments in the alternative energy space, in wind farms. We are, in fact, relooking at our green program and looking to make some announcements here to get deeper into that, because at one point a few years ago we were beyond petroleum and it was this big green program. We're moving back into that direction, but the programs haven't been announced. But certainly our one of the companies that recognizes kind of the business we're in can have some harmful effects. We do have carbon emissions trading and global emissions tradings, and we're trying to we have a biogas business that literally aggregates gas to put into the vehicular fuel market, which goes into CNG for buses in California. And that is all environmentally focused. We become an advocate through API and others around policy making. But it's going to be interesting to see what this administration does relative to those policies, without a doubt. We have, what's our CAP program called? We do have employee-based, I wouldn't call them lobby groups, but political organizations who will state positions on behalf of BP employees. We do have lobbyists, with no doubt, who hopefully are actually lobbying and not lobbying via Twitter. But it's been, very conscientious. And I think the biggest example of that, quite frankly, that we talked about upstairs was after our spill in 2010. I was in Louisiana for 60 days. Here I am, a marketer of natural gas. And they asked me to go to Florida. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm in. No oil's going there. And then they said, no, you're going to Morgan City, Louisiana. When you look at the way BP responded in that crisis, no doubt, horrible accident, loss of lives, do not set that aside at all. But what I was very proud of as a BP employee was how we responded to that. And we responded in a way that I think upped the ante for us from a cost perspective. But I think we also responded in a way that will make no other company in the future respond that way. So I do feel like we absolutely did the right thing in responding to that crisis.
You guys said your emails and contact information were readily available. I was just curious where we could find that information.
Can we get a copy of these? Well, I have a copy now.
So I was actually going to ask you, so I have these up here, but if I can send them electronically to you so that they can register for the training center if you want to. There are links to these, and then I'll end it with my signature and Holly's as well, so you guys have that information.
Yeah, but I teach the training
It is the trading sim I would encourage you to go to. It's real life trading. So you are told position limits, how you make orders, and then you're fed fundamental information, and you make trades based on that information. And then there's awards at the end, plus a ranking of how you did. Very fun.
All right, let's thank our guests.
Thanks.